You should have seen me back in the day. I was a handsome fellow. British through and through. I shone so bright, you needed sunglasses to look at me. I ran as smoothly as an Elvis Presley chat-up line. Oh dear, I have decade after decade of stories to tell. I've seen the world change beyond recognition. But now, look at what 80 years have done to me. After spending half my life in America, I'm finally home in the UK, ready for a well-deserved repair. I'll look like a young whippersnapper again. Charles Rolls, the aristocrat, and Henry Royce, the working-class engineer, came from opposite backgrounds, but all had the same goal: to make the best car. Me.
Royce made 3 prototype cars, and then as soon as he met Rolls, all the others were called Rolls-Royce.
I never got the chance to meet Charles Rolls.
He was always after the latest thing. He was the first person to cross the English Channel.
Unfortunately, his interest in planes was to be his demise. He died in a plane accident in 1910.
Rolls-Royce partnership only actually lasted for about 6 years. The name Claude Johnson is virtually unknown. He steered the company after Rolls's death for the next 20 years. He is far more important in the Rolls-Royce story than was Rolls.
So vital was Claude Johnson. He is the hyphen between Rolls and Royce. I was born at the Derby factory. I was given the name Rolls-Royce 2530. I was the new face of Britain, an icon of class, of status, and I loved it. But it wasn't long before I was whisked away by my first owner, Wilfred Howard Williams, a respectable man, a director of the London Midlands Scotland Railway Company. Whilst I was with old Wilfred, we got a new king, George VI, in 1937.
With their family, for there are the little princesses on the right, coming up to share the acclamations.
I remember wishing I could be driving royalty around one day. A kid can dream, eh? It wouldn't make me the first Rolls-Royce to be driven around by royalty.
The oldest one, the 1935 vintage Rolls-Royce, was originally built for His Highness the Maharaja of Baroda. At the time, he was the second richest man in the world.
Here we go then. The stripper. No, not that sort. The British Empire. Britain was still on top of the world. But that was all going to change, thanks to an Austrian fellow named Adolf Hitler. Hitler liked to be driven around in a Mercedes. Let's just say I'm glad that he was never caught in a Rolls-Royce. Britain declared war on Germany, and we were officially in our Second World War. Oh yes, it was good old Rolls-Royce who built the engines for the greatest flying machines ever made. Our engines went into Hurricanes, Spitfires, and even the great Lancaster bomber. Up in our new factory in Crewe, like us, those planes were British engineering at its finest. Rolls-Royces don't break down. They fail to proceed. That was what the company always said. I knew those Spitfires would never break down. So, the war was finally over, but it wasn't plain sailing, or should I say, driving thrust cars. Slowly peeling back memories of the past. When you own a Rolls-Royce, you want all eyes on you.
Yeah, the car attracts a lot of attention, but as long as you're not a fool about it, yeah, it's a thing of beauty and it's there to be enjoyed.
Well, that wasn't going to happen in 1945. No one could afford a car like myself.
These were incredibly expensive cars, and it was advertising a Rolls-Royce for sale, and the Rolls-Royce was for sale for £3,000. Below it, there was an advert for a domestic maid, and her salary was £40 a year.
Old Wilfred sold me on. My new owner was Sammy Jenkinson, who had me all the way to the 60s. Blackpool was my new home. In 1952, Rolls-Royce became the official car of the royal family. I've never been so happy to hear this news, just in time for the Queen's coronation. America was coming. American TV, fashion and culture. Even the music was changing. Something called rock and roll. So noisy. But the kids loved it. Maybe they felt rebellious. Blimey! Look at this paint that's been laid on over the years. It's sad to see it all go. But they'll never be able to wash away all those memories. 62 is when I left Blackpool and my dear old Sammy behind. My next adventure was Plymouth, where the 60s and a headmaster awaited me. Ah, the swinging 60s. They say, if you remember it, then you weren't really there. Well, I was there, and I do remember it. My new owner, Horace David Coysh Busby, was a true gent. He had experienced a few things in his time. He was a military major. But when I came to him, he was running a tight ship at the Plymstock School as a headmaster. When it came to the old major, didn't matter how rich your folks were. You played up with Busby, it would be the cane, no messing. He soon whipped that school into shape. Occasionally we'd have a rude awakening when some awful noise would come on the radio. Busby was having none of the 60s free love nonsense. And as for those working class upstarts making a song and dance about holding someone's hand, well, I wasn't a fan of the Volkswagen Beetle, and those Beetles certainly weren't any different.
The ideal owner of a Rolls Royce then would be a rock star, pop icon, and somebody, a millionaire.
So imagine our horror to find out that hippie John Lennon was driving around in none other than a Rolls-Royce Phantom.
The thoughts of John Lennon painting his car, to my mind, is totally acceptable. It was a reflection on Lennon's character. It's a reflection on how the car was earned. There's nothing they could do about it.
In the swinging 60s, when you had the likes of the Bee Gees and the Stones driving around in their Rolls Royces, that made them cool, and that's what made them cool now.
I'm surprised Rolls-Royce let him do that, to be honest with you, because there's quite a few things that Rolls-Royce wouldn't allow you to do in those days.
It was a shock, all right. What was the world coming to? I didn't know then that my life as an Englishman's pride and joy was coming to an abrupt end. On a warm summer's morning in 1968, Horace explained, "I'm being sold to a wealthy lady in America." Yes, that's right. I was going across the lake to the US of bloody A. Busby had to help me recover, open my choke, and get me breathing again. Once my engine had cooled, he told me a bit more. Her name was Valerie L. Cherksey. I'm not sure how I felt about a woman driving me. I was so accustomed to having a male chauffeur at my wheel.
In the 60s, they were orientated towards the owners of the cars actually driving them themselves.
Within the week, I was being loaded unceremoniously onto a ship. I couldn't stay mad at Horace. I owed him a lot, and those 15 years with him had been some of the happiest of my life. 1960s America. The decade that changed the nation, they were calling it. JFK was assassinated, and later the Stonewall riots. This did not sound like the place for a car of my pedigree. It's not all bad, though. Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech impacted the lives of many.
Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Maybe a Rolls Royce like me can adjust to the home of the free. Right, 1970s America was somewhat different to the norm for a Rolls Royce. I mean, I'd only been here for 2 years, but wow, things changed quickly. In 1971, Rolls-Royce Limited was nationalised due to the financial collapse of the company. They had spent too much money researching some new jet engine. Maybe they should have spent more time on cars and less on planes. Anyway, being a Rolls-Royce in America back then was a hoot. I mean, those Americans couldn't get enough of us. Tony Curtis, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor all had Rolls-Royces. Not the people I would usually associate with Rolls-Royce, if I'm honest.
Rolls-Royce can't afford to stand still. If Rolls-Royce are only selling to captains of industry now, we probably wouldn't be talking about it.
This is the part that hurts the most. Just as things were going okay for me again, my dear old Valerie popped her clogs. Yes, 1976 was a horrible year. Almost 10 years together, and she was a good owner for a woman. I didn't even mind the fact she'd left her mark on me for life, her initials engraved onto my right-hand door, stunning font in gold. I got passed on to her partner, Mervyn Long. But in 1978, things were moving on. Rolls-Royce had the competition from Volkswagen, the second non-American car factory to open, proving that European cars were becoming increasingly more popular amongst Americans.
Should Rolls-Royce be that exclusive? I suppose the fear is the more common it becomes, the less exclusive it becomes, to some extent the less desirable it becomes.
While the fashion reached a new level of crazy with their neon clothing and curly perms, over in LA, I still managed to remain classy. I remember being in a car park and seeing about 8 to 10 Rolls-Royce. It was mind-blowing. Back in the day, you were lucky to even see one. What amazed me the most is that one of the owners was the famous Sammy Davis Jr., an African-American man owning a Rolls-Royce in 1980s America was like seeing a car powered by electricity. It's amazing to see how the Rolls-Royce image was slowly changing with society. Nearly there now. This coat of primer before the paint. I almost feel young again. We waved goodbye to fluorescent leg warmers and crazy hair. 20 years on, I was still in America, still residing with Mervyn in California. He was always on this newfangled thing they called the World Wide Web. The amount of new technology in the 90s was increasing rapidly, and boy, were people keen to splash when it came to mod cons. I've heard stories about picnic sets, double beds, fridges, and people tampering with the spirit of ecstasy.
In the 70s, there was a guy who was into hot dogs and burgers and things, and he took the silver lady off and put a silver hot dog on the... But he was written a letter to say, can you please remove it?
All those cracks and dents are being smoothed away now. I've acquired quite a few over my time. Some that I'm sad to lose, others I won't mind forgetting. In 2003, Rolls-Royce Motors was eventually bought by BMW, a German car company. At the time I told them, you may as well melt me down and turn me into an eagle statue for the Third Reich. It stirred outrage with some, controversial even to this day.
The purchase by Rolls-Royce by BMW and the purchase of Bentley by Volkswagen saddens me, because they're traditionally British cars, British made, British components.
Had BMW not acquired Rolls-Royce, it may have gone. And bringing the German investment in, the qualities brought back into the car, it can only be a good thing.
I'm very patriotic, and I would much prefer to Rolls-Royce and Bentley to be in British hands where it should be. Yeah.
I'm made of metal and wood, and I'm still running smoothly. We were built to stand the test of time.
Rolls-Royces years ago, they were made to last. I mean, these here are like 60, 70, one's 80 years old. I'd like to see a modern one in 80 years' time.
And we're there for those big moments in people's lives. What an honour to be part of such a memorable occasion. Apparently we're more popular in Dubai now than anywhere else in the world. It's absolutely mad to see the impact our British-born company has made in all corners of the globe.
It's a status symbol in the new money as well, so that's why I think Rolls-Royce is so popular around the world again now.
Rolls-Royce had opened a showroom, and one of the Indian princes went in there and wasn't too pleased with the service he got from the salesperson, and he went in there and bought 6 Rolls-Royces and converted them into ash carts for his country to collect the rubbish, just to annoy Rolls-Royce and the salesman.
A decade into the 21st century, and I'm finally back home. But not for long. Just to have myself cleaned up, I have been bought by one Pierre Favreau Kuhn, a car collector who owns some very impressive motor vehicles in Switzerland. So now here I am, being stripped down and put back together. Not quite as good as new, not after all these years. A right pampering I've been getting. A lovely jet wash to get rid of any unwanted bits and pieces. Admittedly, the water could have been warmer, but hey-ho. A full sand down after to smooth out my surfaces before the primer goes on. Well, that's it. You know my story now. Am I disappointed that Rolls-Royce is no longer exclusively British? Perhaps a little, but throughout these years I've learned to adjust. I've come to realise that it doesn't matter what kind of a person owns me. Everyone from the Queen of England to the Kardashians now drive a Rolls-Royce, and that's just fine by me.